December 13th, 1945 at 3 a.m. A 22-year-old woman sits alone in a British military prison writing her final letter. She's been called the most beautiful woman in Belsen. She's also been called a sadistic monster who tortured thousands of prisoners. In just 10 hours, she'll walk to the gallows and become the youngest woman ever executed under British military law in the 20th century. This is the story of Irma Grese and the chilling final day of the woman they called the Beautiful Beast. Her face could have graced magazine covers, blonde hair, striking blue eyes, a smile that photographers would have loved. But behind that face was something the world struggled to comprehend. A woman who selected prisoners for gas chambers the way someone picks fruit at a market, who beat inmates with her bare hands, who laughed while people died. Today, we're going deep into the final 24 hours of one of history's most disturbing figures. We'll walk through her last day, her last words, and the psychological puzzle she left behind. Because understanding monsters isn't about excusing them. It's about making sure we recognize evil before it takes root again. Let's rewind first. Because Irma Grese wasn't born a monster. She was born October 7th, 1923, in Recken, Mecklenburg-Strelitz, Germany. Normal family, 5 kids. Her mother struggled with depression and committed suicide when Irma was 13. That trauma marked her, but trauma alone doesn't create what she became. Thousands of German children lost parents and never tortured anyone. At 15, she tried to become a nurse. She wanted to help people. But here's where the story takes its first dark turn. She couldn't get the training position because she didn't join the League of German Girls, the Nazi youth organization. So she made a choice. She joined, and that choice changed everything. By 1942, at just 19 years old, Irma volunteered to become an SS guard. Not conscripted, she volunteered. Think about that. A teenage girl actively choosing to work in the concentration camp system. She started at Ravensbrück, then transferred to Auschwitz-Birkenau in March 1943. And this is where witnesses say the transformation completed. The farm girl from a small village became something unrecognizable. Prisoners who survived remembered her walking through the camp with her German shepherd, a whip coiled at her belt, selecting women for death like she was shopping. Well, she had favorites among the guards, including the camp doctor Josef Mengele, the angel of death himself. Some testimonies suggest they had a relationship, though the full truth died with them. But here's what we know for certain. She wasn't just following orders, she enjoyed it. Female prisoners testified that Irma would beat them for the smallest infractions. A glance, a word, sometimes nothing at all. She used boots, whips, her pistol. One survivor described watching Irma set her dog on a prisoner, laughing as the woman screamed. She became one of the youngest senior overseers, responsible for tens of thousands of female prisoners at Auschwitz. The Nazis saw something in her, a cruelty that even hardened SS officers found remarkable. And here's the part that still haunts historians. She was beautiful. Not despite her actions, but alongside them. Prisoners said she took pride in her appearance, always immaculate, always striking. The contrast between her looks and her actions created a cognitive dissonance that made her even more terrifying. How do you process beauty and brutality in the same person? In January 1945, as Soviet forces closed in, Auschwitz was evacuated. Irma was transferred to Bergen-Belsen. If Auschwitz was Hell's factory, Belsen became Hell's graveyard. Overcrowded, disease-ridden, a slow-motion apocalypse. British forces liberated Belsen on April 15, 1945. What they found broke even hardened soldiers. Bodies stacked like firewood. Survivors more skeleton than human. And walking among them, SS guards, including a 21-year-old blonde woman who seemed utterly unbothered by the carnage around her. Irma Grese was arrested immediately. The Belsen Trial opened on September 17, 1945, in Lüneburg, Germany. 45 defendants faced British military justice. Irma was the most infamous female defendant, accused of extreme personal brutality. The prosecution called 55 witnesses. Survivor after survivor took the stand. Their testimonies were devastating. Women described watching Irma shoot prisoners for sport, beat them until they couldn't move, select them for gas chambers while humming songs. One survivor testified that Irma had once beaten her so severely that her breasts were permanently damaged. Another described seeing her kick a pregnant woman to death. Irma's defense attorney tried the expected strategy. She was young, she was following orders, she had no choice, but the evidence overwhelmed every excuse. Here's what made her case different from other guards. Witnesses didn't just describe brutality, they described enthusiasm. Orders didn't explain the smiles, the laughter, the creative cruelty, and Irma herself didn't help her case. In court, she showed no remorse, no emotion. She answered questions about murder the way someone might discuss grocery shopping: clinical, detached, empty. Psychiatrists who evaluated her found no mental illness, no psychosis. She knew right from wrong. She simply didn't care. November 17, 1945. The judge delivered his verdict. Guilty, death by hanging. Irma reportedly went pale but said nothing. She was 22 years old. She would never see 23. December 13, 1945. Let's walk through those last hours. 3 a.m. Guards check on her. Surviving records confirm that she wrote at least one letter to her siblings in the days leading up to her execution, a letter in which she expressed defiance rather than remorse. Between mourning and execution, chaplains visited the condemned prisoners. Irma declined extended religious counsel. She wasn't religious, she said. Another layer to the puzzle: no faith, no ideology beyond Nazism, no apparent moral framework at all. British officers noted her composure. She didn't cry, didn't beg, didn't even seem particularly afraid. One described her as unnaturally calm, like someone waiting for a train, not death. This calmness disturbed the guards. They'd seen men break down, scream, fight. Irma just waited. 1 p.m. The time arrived. Hameln prison courtyard, a temporary gallows, 3 nooses. Irma would hang alongside 2 other Belsen guards, Juana Bormann and Elisabeth Volkenrath, all women, all young, all found guilty of crimes that defied comprehension. Irma was led out second. British execution records document that she wore prison clothes, her blonde hair still somehow neat. She walked steadily. No stumbling, no resistance. On the gallows, prisoners were allowed final words. Juana Bormann screamed protests of innocence. Elisabeth Volkenrath said nothing. Irma Grese spoke, her last words recorded by multiple witnesses. Schnell, fast, that's it. One word, make it quick. Not I'm sorry, not God forgive me, not even I didn't do it, just Schnell. The hood went over her head. The executioner, Albert Pierrepoint, Britain's chief hangman, positioned the noose. He later wrote in his memoirs that Irma never trembled, never cried. He'd hanged murderers, spies, traitors. None unnerved him like this calm young woman. The trap dropped. Irma Grese died instantly. Pierrepoint was a professional. He calculated the drop precisely. No suffering, just a sudden end. She was 22 years old, the youngest woman executed under British law in the 20th century. Her body was buried in an unmarked grave in Hameln. No memorial, no marker, just earth covering the remains of someone who'd caused so much death. In the 79 years since, historians, psychologists and philosophers have tried to understand Irma Grese. How does a farm girl become a mass murderer? What was broken inside her, or was anything broken at all? Some point to her mother's suicide, theorizing trauma created emptiness that Nazism filled. Others argue she represents something darker, proof that evil doesn't need complex origins, that some people will embrace cruelty when given permission and power. The banality of evil philosopher Hannah Arendt described wasn't quite right for Irma. Her evil wasn't banal, it was enthusiastic. She didn't kill from indifference, she killed from something worse. Today, Irma Grese exists as a historical warning. She studied in courses on genocide, on the Holocaust, on human psychology. Her face appears in documentaries, always with that same question. How? But maybe we're asking the wrong question. Maybe it's not, how did she become this? Maybe it's, how do we stop others from becoming this? Because the uncomfortable truth is that Irma wasn't unique. The concentration camps were full of people who chose cruelty over compassion, who found pleasure in others' pain. She was just younger and more photogenic than most, which made her easier to remember and harder to forget. On that cold December morning in 1945, when Irma Grese took her last breath, the world didn't become safer. The evil she represented didn't die with her. It never does. Genocides have happened since. Torture has continued. Cruelty remains humanity's shadow, always there, always waiting for the right conditions to emerge. Irma's story isn't about her, not really. It's about us, about what humans are capable of when we abandon empathy, about how monsters look like everyone else. Sometimes they look like beautiful young women with blonde hair and blue eyes. The most terrifying thing about Irma Grese isn't that she existed, it's that she probably wasn't that different from any of us at birth. The capacity for what she became might be in everyone. The difference is choice. She made hers. We make ours every day. On December 13th, 1945, British justice ended one life that had taken thousands, but the questions she left behind remain unanswered, perhaps unanswerable. Schnell, she said, fast. For her victims, death never came fast enough. For her, it came exactly on time.